to be that not hard done by, but put out by requiring that extra service. Do we have any numbers on what the cost is?
I've had a quick look at a couple of the major providers in Nova Scotia, and from what I see, of course, internet providers are, there's different providers, different prices, and they have different speeds. The two major ones, from a base to a higher speed, what I'm seeing with including HST, I'm seeing about $95 per month to $135 per month just for internet, period. Now, I believe there are cheaper services out there, but they may be limited in where they can deliver their services to. So, but I think that's generally what you're seeing. The other thing to factor in here, of course, is, from the perspective of a counselor, is they're probably using that personally as well, the internet service. So there's a personal component as well. So
Yeah.
everybody would differ.
Yeah, because I know I pay personally $160 a month just for internet.
Yeah.
That's what it costs to get it where I'm at.
Yeah.
So, like I said, the 65, when I do the ratio, kind of works for me. But if people are paying more some other places, then definitely. So there's some other people to speak. So I will sit back now, and I'll wait to hear from the rest of the council.
Councillor McPhee.
Thank you, Warden. Yes, just I pay $95 a month for internet in Shubenacadie, and that's through Eastlink. So that's just for high-speed internet. So that is my cost. So just to back up what figures we just been given. Thank you.
Councillor Tingley.
Through the chair, I wasn't even paying attention to this and wasn't even aware I was getting $65 a month for internet. So I already have internet, and if I'm getting $65 a month for it, it's just contributing to what my cost would be anyway. So it's of no concern to me whether I get $65 or not. But I do recognize if somebody else has to go out and buy this and there's an extra cost for them, maybe they should get more, but hopefully we don't spend too much time talking about this. That's all I get to say.
Does anyone else have any comments? Is anyone prepared to move a motion that we either leave the internet and cell amounts the same, or that we change them, or what is your wish? Councillor Tingley.
I'll motion to leave them as they are for now.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor McPhee. Are there any discussion on the motion? Question has been called. And the motion is passed unanimously. So that brings us back to the original report. And there are two recommendations there. Councillor Green.
I would move the recommended motion.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Question's been called. The motion is passed by a vote of 10-1, with Councillor Rhino voting nay. I would pass the chair back to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Warden. Next up, we're going to look at the recognition policy and wait for. Okay. All right. Just looking to see who's going to take it. So go ahead, Amanda.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Yes. In October 2022, Council adopted a recognition policy. The annual review of this policy gives us an opportunity to revise and improve the policy if needed. There is a draft attached to the agenda today which highlights the changes we are recommending, specifically around recognition for volunteer firefighter long service. In the current policy, sections 9 and 10 explain how the municipality recognizes firefighter long service. Combining these two sections into one section and reorganizing the information a little bit will more clearly explain when we will recognize long service and when the province will recognize long service. So we are recommending that council approve the amended policy.
Thank you. Warden Rolls.
I would move that we approve the changes to the policy as recommended.
Approved and second. Is there any further discussion? Question's been called. And the motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, I will turn it over to the CAO for beautification grant funding review. Oh, sorry, I skipped one there.
Went to
We're
the
gonna go to
review.
council procedure policy, CAO. You're up back to back, but we'll do the procedure policy first.
I just do what he tells me to do. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So council, your council procedural policy review has been done. We do have a couple of housekeeping updates, as well as one update that came from a motion of council. So the first update to your policy would be to indicate that your Planning Advisory Committee may also act as the Heritage Advisory Committee per your bylaw, the Heritage Property Bylaw. That's a standard housekeeping update based on the wording in the bylaw. We also had some legal clarification on the role of council members who were appointed to external committees and boards by council. And the question was, are those folks there as a representative of council or the board that they are representing, which is sometimes a difficult question when you're at a board table and the interests are conflicting. So just an update to your procedural policy that council members appointed to external boards and committees are appointed in their capacity as a council member and as a representative of the municipality with the intent that they act in the best interest of the municipality while sitting on that board or committee on behalf of council. And that just gives the committee members leave to speak on behalf of council and in the best interest of council. The third one is a recommendation, recommended wording that be added to the policy. This came from a motion of council that staff bring back an update to council's procedural policy clarifying the roles of individual councilors and as council as a group when dealing with other levels of government. So as you all know, there's a protocol in place for political conversations of such. For example, an individual councillor wouldn't speak to a minister of the Crown, but the warden can speak to the minister of the Crown. So those two levels speak to each other. It's the same as I would never email a minister of the Crown, but I would email a deputy minister because they're at the staff level, the same as I am. So the section being recommended here is except when dealing with the local MLA or MP on local district issues. So you'd still be able to have those conversations at the local level with your MLA or your MP. with the intent that the MLA would be the one who then has that avenue to speak to their political partners, if it was a minister or another MLA, they could speak on our behalf, which is a part of their role as an MLA, or the MP could speak to a federal minister. So if it was a housing issue, for example, then the MP, if they felt it was important for the district, they could then speak to the Minister of Housing, for example, on a federal issue. So not removing that ability for councillors to be effective at the local level in their district, council members would not engage or communicate with members of other levels of government, government departments or agencies, municipal vendors, or other corporations on specific municipal matters unless authorized to do so by council or the warden. If council has directed staff to engage members of other levels of government or an organization on a specific topic, individual councillors may not speak on behalf of council on the issue. And this would avoid those issues where if staff are speaking to government or the warden is speaking to government or an agency, typically a crown or another business, we shouldn't have 4 or 5 other councillors also speaking to that agency or government on behalf of council. So it does say in your procedural policy or in your code of conduct that, you know, you're not able to speak on behalf of council. This just clarifies it a little bit. And I would also add that this probably belongs in a code of conduct more so than a procedural policy, but there is a new code of conduct coming from legislation at the provincial level, hopefully this year, I'm assuming. And until I think this morning or yesterday afternoon, we weren't sure whether we were going to be able to change that code of conduct or whether it was going to be legislated as is where is. We have some indication now that we will be able to change that code of conduct slightly. They're hoping that everyone stays within the same sort of general concepts as they promote it. So you may see this come back once that all gets worked through and this section go into a code of conduct. But for now, in a procedural policy, it fits. It's probably just not the ideal place. So those are the 3 recommended changes. The policy is attached, and the 2 motions are on the screen for your review.
Thank you, CAO. First to speak, Councillor McPhee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like a clarification on 9.1.3. So I understand that councillors can't speak on behalf of council, but at what level can we interact with government? Because obviously we talk to the supervisors of the local public works department. It might be natural resources, it could be environment. We might contact the environment department on behalf of a resident. Would that be a problem?
Okay, go ahead, Warden.
Yeah. Generally speaking, no. Certainly, if you want to call Public Works or whatever, that's fine. The problem happens when council is engaging with other levels of government or outside organizations, and staff are working one-to-one, or council has written or is speaking with a particular provincial or federal department, and correspondence and discussion and negotiation is going on, and all of a sudden you get emails maybe from 1, 2, 3, 4, you can't have, for example, 11 people emailing the Minister of Transportation, Environment, or whatever. It muddies the water. It causes confusion because between meetings, individual councillors, number one, they don't know what the latest communication has been on the issue. It causes confusion in those departments because all of a sudden it's, well, who am I supposed to be answering? This letter says this, but this person wants this. And it's just a protocol that has always been followed, but it was just felt that it was time it should be formalized. But as far as calling the Public Works hotline in Cape Breton because the road is bad, it's not intended that you wouldn't be able to do that. But it certainly is intended that, for example, you wouldn't call the Minister of Environment
Yeah.
and, lodge a complaint about something. I don't know how really to explain it much better than that, but if that doesn't clarify it, I'll try.
And yes, and that's basically, without this policy, how I would have seen it. But I myself and other members of council know people within the civil service. So at what level can't, I could certainly call up, I know the Deputy Minister of Public Works.
That would probably not be appropriate.
That wouldn't be appropriate.
No.
No. Area manager?
I'll let you see
See,
it.
this is where, I understand what the policy's for.
I
You
think-
can't
I
speak
think-
on behalf, but limiting us to who we can talk to also has its
I-
issues.
I think there's a difference, through you, Mr. Chairman, on advocating for a constituent. So if it was an issue where an individual constituent had an issue, I would still prefer that you would go through at least our staff to talk to their staff, if it's a transportation issue on public infrastructure. It's always, because if you're advocating on behalf of a constituent who can't do it for themselves, I think that is different. So if someone's unable to do that advocacy and you're helping them as a counselor,
It should still just
But
go.
but it should still go through the staff level, because our staff deal with their staff, and it needs to be consistent. So if we have, council has given us 5 priorities to deal with transportation, and then we have 5 other counselors also dealing with transportation, they're just gonna say, well, East Hants is too much, and we'll, they could just be done with us. So I think from a council priority point of view, it's important that we stick with the issues that are important to council. I mean, you can't say, well, if you see so-and-so at the grocery store, you're just gonna turn a blind eye, because that's not it at all. But it's really that advocacy piece that needs to be done consistently across the board. And we need to be seen as being fair and consistent to our constituents as well. So because Councillor X knows the deputy minister, that district shouldn't be getting more attention for East Hants than the other 10 districts.
But if you're trying to solve a problem for a particular resident, it's not for the whole district, it's only for that resident, or maybe a couple of residents.
I would say that our staff should be the ones corresponding with Public Works, but the warden can weigh in.
Hold on here, I'm just switching people around so everybody. Oh, don't touch the thing.
Sorry.
I'm trying to press buttons. There we go. Go ahead, Warden.
I think when it comes, personally, when I get a call from a resident who is having issues around a provincial road or whatever, I give them the information of where to call. And if they request it, I will call the Public Works line myself. And then if I think more follow-up is warranted, I call the MLA. And I say, Mr. or Miss whatever so-and-so has this issue on this road, I believe it's warranted, they have called, here's their number, or I give them the MLA's office number, and I have called, and here is the number they assigned to my call as proof that they've received this information, could you follow up? And he follows up every time with the area manager or whoever he feels should be the next in command. The problem being, as the CAO has said, it muddies the waters because provincial ministers in different departments, they talk the same as councillors talk. And it's not professional to have a letter from the municipality requesting this or negotiating this, and then maybe to have other members of council correspond separately who may have different opinions or want to know more information than was originally asked for. So then you have the staff at the ministerial level scrambling to try and answer the municipality. If it's, for example, Jesse or whoever who has been tasked with solving the problem, he doesn't know that other people have entered into this. And it has the ability to cause problems. And it's not really meant to curtail anyone from speaking to the MLA and asking him to advocate on the behalf of any citizen. But it's just meant to clarify our role. If council has written a formal letter about something, maybe it's taking the province a long time to get back to us. But it's not the place of individual councillors to write to the minister's office and complain because they're taking too long to get back to us.
Oh, absolutely.
And those are the types of things this is meant to
guess
address.
where I see is limits us to just talking to the MLA or MP. That's what it says. And is that really the intent? Because
For
just
most
said,
things, I would say.
for most things, but you can't,
Yes.
that doesn't say for most things. It says except when dealing with the local MLA or MP on local district
I
issues.
would go so far myself, and council can do as they please. I mean, calling the area manager for transportation about an issue in your district is probably not out of
Exactly.
line.
That's, yeah.
There could be a problem if we don't know if you know that the municipality just wrote a letter to the area manager last month, you're not going to call the area manager because council's already done that. It's always preferable, if it's possible, to come to council and say, under business from councilors or whatever, I would like council to write a letter to transportation requesting this, or this. And then it's official, and it's from council. And the minister's office or the area, whoever gets that, knows that that correspondence is from the municipality, and whatever staff member has been tasked with sending that correspondence will get the response and give it back to council. So, anyway, best I can do on that.
Yeah, okay.
Did that answer your questions, Counselor?
Yes, okay.
Thank you. Next up, Counselor Tingley.
Through the chair. The first item there, on acting in the best interest of the municipality on boards, no issue with that, but I think that's already covered in the procedural manual. It already states that we're supposed to be acting in the best interest of the municipality. Item number 7, the councillor oath, the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and the Duty of Loyalty Act. As public servants, our primary responsibility is to the municipality. And in any board that I'm on outside of the municipality, I advise them that. But I see nothing wrong with that. I do have a little concern, like Councillor McPhee, regarding the restrictions, the limitations on who council can speak with. Currently there's no rules or laws, policies that prevent councillors from talking to anybody. And the Charter of Rights allows anybody to speak with anybody, except for certain types of communication like hate and pornography and that sort of heinous crimes. But when I saw this coming up on the council documents, I looked into it a little bit, and I see Graham Steele, former MLA, lawyer, professor at Dalhousie, wrote an article on this, and he was actually encouraging more communication with counselors and various MLAs and MPs. And he wasn't limiting, he thought there should be more communication, open communication. Not attacking people or causing problems, but good, friendly, effective communication. I saw another article that a professor at Monk's School of Global Affairs in Ontario, Waterloo, I think it is, the university, they did a survey on 450 mayors and councillors, and they did find that councillors are engaging with, or some councillors are, like some councillors don't, and that's fine. But some councillors do engage, like if Councillor McPhee knows people and he can help somebody or anybody else, if they can help their client or their constituent, you know, why put a restriction on that? And there's a leading case, Supreme Court case, Irwin Troy Limited versus Quebec. One of the statements in that decision is freedom of expression, whether political, religious, artistic, commercial, should not be suppressed, except in cases where urgent and compelling reasons exist, and then only to the extent and for the time necessary to protect the community. So I think the Court of Public Opinion and the courts look at communication as a good thing, as long as it's good communication and not. I think most councillors here, it's probably not often that we do have to engage with, you know, these other groups, these other levels, but in my experience, staff mostly deal with that, and that's fine. Or the warden is the spokesperson for the council. I totally get that. But in the last 2.5 years since I've been on council, there's many things that I don't even come to council with that I'll get a call about and that I can help somebody with. Now I'm going to have these rules that I can't talk to other levels of government. I don't know if it's even enforceable, you know, given the laws that already exist. My recommendation would be to wait and see what the province come down with this conflict of interest or that they're coming down with, and see what we do from there. Because you know, when we go to NSFM and FCM, we're speaking to all these actors, you know, and these discussions come up. All of a sudden, you're going to say, no, I'm not going to have that discussion. Or when you're out at other functions, it's not unusual to have a discussion with an issue that you have going on with anybody that you might know. So obviously, I'm not going to vote for that part of the motion here. The rest of it is fine. Even though one part there, I think we're already bound to act in the best interest of the municipality all the time. So that's about all I have to say on that.
Thank you, Councillor. And one of the biggest things with this, as I see it written, is the fact that as individual councillors, we all have our own, you know, opinions on things. But anything we do outside of council with outside organizations, we always require a vote of council, right? So the position you take with an outside organization, if you're representing council or representing yourself as a councillor for that area or a councillor for East Hants, have you received approval from council to represent that position? That's the biggest thing that could come into question here. Anybody can call up as John Doe and lodge a complaint on the Charter of Human Rights, absolutely. But when you represent yourself as a councillor for East Hants, without council's backing on a position, you are not acting in the best representation of the municipality. You are acting on your own accord for a certain agenda. This makes it that you have to go through a certain policy so the municipality knows and the rest of council knows if you're reaching out to an organization unbeknownst to the rest of council. That is kind of, you know, we're here as a group and we work for the betterment of the whole municipality. And if we all keep going off on separate branches, it is going to muddy the waters, and the right hand and left hand might not know what's going on. That's kind of where this has kind of hit the road for me. And I think this is a good first step, and as other things come forward, I think we can build on that. So
Can I respond to that?
go right ahead, Counselor.
I totally understand the intent of this, but what it actually does is just too restrictive of your ability to communicate. And I don't think it's even enforceable, but we'll see what happens.
Next up, Counselor Rhino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I read this. Yeah. Over the weekend, makes sense. Makes sense. I heard the wardens, what she's saying, makes sense. I listened to the CAO, and I'm saying no. And I listened to just your rebuttal to Councillor Tingley, and I'm saying no. I said the way things, you got to realize we are the closest politician, whatever you want to call us, to the people. We are the ones that are most likely going to get the call on even provincial issues such as road and so on, because we are the closest to the people. And then we usually move on and put that to the MLA or member of parliament. This is how I handle it. If I get a complaint and if I can handle it through the area manager, the supervisor of transportation, or otherwise, I do so. If it doesn't meet with success, and I believe that it warrants further support, I come to council and I bring it to council, and you either vote to send a letter or work on that behalf of that constituent, or you don't. I mean, that's how it works. But once I bring it to council and we write a letter or correspond, if I do any further correspondence with anybody, then I would keep council informed or staff informed of what I'm doing. But if we're going to have this, so every time that we get a complaint or anything that we have to come through council once a month through thing or go through staff, that's not right. That is not right whatsoever, and this is what I'm hearing from the CAO and from you, Mr. Chair, and you can clarify if I'm not right. That's not correct. Well, once council becomes involved, then you have to, in my opinion, you have to stand back and wait for that to take its course. But I don't want to limit any councillor from trying to alleviate problems for their residents by going through an MLA or area manager, MLA, whatever, to try to, as long as you're doing it in a cordial manner and it doesn't get, it's done very nicely, and go on. That's what I see we should still be able to do. But like I said, once council becomes involved, then that is an issue that, okay, council is support, let that work its course, and then if there's any correspondence between anyone in that government or anything else, staff should be informed so we all are working on the same page. That's how I see it. But, I'm hearing mixed messages. If you can clarify, maybe I'll support this.
So the example you gave about calling the local area manager and touching base with the supervisor, that is, and then going to the MLA, that is what this is basically saying. What it's saying is you're not going to go to the deputy minister over an issue, right? You're not going to go to, contact whatever company was contracted for that service to complain about what their job or what their product was at the end. And if you contact the area manager and you don't get the resolve that you want, right? You contact the MLA, you don't get the resolve that you want, you then bring it to council and we send an official letter. That's kind of the process, if I'm understanding, like from the warden and the CAO. That is, in that situation you outlined, how you said you handle it, is exactly how it's supposed to be handled.
Yeah, but it wasn't, to me, your CAOs and your explanation didn't wasn't coming across that would still remain, right? And this is what, you
That-
know, if I'm going to talk to the deputy minister as a counselor, I'm damn well gonna have the council support behind me before I do it. Look, I mean, that's just common, to me, my opinion, common sense, if there is such a thing, you know? But if I'm gonna talk to the local officials, and if that is going to put a damper on that, I can't support it in that way. So, you see where I'm coming from?
I see where you're coming from, but, and I'll let the CAO speak, or that the contact to the local area managers is not, I believe, not in this. Go ahead, CAO.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think, I'm trying to think of all the different provincial departments that we deal with. And I think roads is probably the one example where they do have local staff that we would typically be, you as counselors would be engaging with at the provincial level on behalf of your constituents. So you could clarify this to say, except dealing with the local staff on provincial road issues, the MLA or the MP on a local district issue, and then carry on. If that would bring some,
What we also could be
Some
dealing
insight.
with, talking to lands and forest issue supervisors and lands and forest. We could be talking to the Department of Environment. It just shouldn't be limited to roads. But once you go to a certain level, I think that, you know, to me, it should be involved with council and get council's approval. I don't want to limit us to being able to work on behalf of our residents.
there does become an issue though, Counselor, when you mentioned Department of Environment. So there are times when we have applications from the Department of Environment where, we may be, strategically planning out our year of applications or for wetland alterations or anything like that. So if we have something that's really critical to East Hants to get through environment and we're working that through with their staff at the staff level, we don't want to have a whole bunch of other East Hants issues going to environment that aren't benefiting East Hants as a whole.
I guess I'm talking
that-
about your local environmental issues, right? SOAR, things like that, and those issues. And that we Counselor could possibly be in correspondence with them and get an explanation or whatever. But if it involves a municipality on, okay, we need this substation or pump up lift station, then we're not gonna, no, we're not talking about that. And this is what I'm talking about is the direct concerns that the residents have. Don't matter where it's at, should be able to talk to somebody at some level without having to go through council. And that's my point.
And Counselor, I think the wording here is important as you go through the paragraph to say on specific municipal matters. So that is something specific to the municipality,
Which I have no problem with, but I just don't want to, if I call the Department of Environment and talk to a field officer on a complaint, I don't want that to come back and say, you shouldn't have done that, you don't have the authority to do that, and that's what I want to stay away from. But if there's an issue that's involving the whole municipality on planning, whatever, that's a different ball of wax. I'm talking about being able to represent our residents with their concerns and trying to help work on their behalf. If that's not limited, I'll support it. But if there's any way, if that becomes a limited issue that we are limited or not, I can support that. So that's how I feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next up, Counselor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in full support of this, and the reason why is many of us have second job, and if the resident know that you could solve all their problem, you're gonna be hammered with so many issues that is not your responsibility, and you cannot fix that whole world. Some of you know the area manager, probably they can fix it, but many of us don't know anybody. And for once, I contacted the Department of Transportation for a resident that is blind. He couldn't deal with them about a culvert that had been washed by storm. And the first thing they told me, we'll do this one for you, but we like to hear from the residents themselves. So anybody can talk to them as a resident, but as a counselor, you cannot fix the whole problem. Like, we have a lot of provincial matter on our hand, and I don't think it's our responsibility, and it should be advertised too, because people should know that if you have provincial issue, that's a number to call. And many of our staff, they're doing it wrong, because if somebody contact the municipalities, they send them to the counselor. That is wrong to do, because they could give them the number, and if you tell the people that everything that you need to be done, you gotta call your counselor. I think we should be paid for a full-time job and quit our jobs, because I don't think we cannot handle all that. Some of us are retired, they have a lot of time on their hand, but many of us have full-time job other than that. And about contacted the MLA and sitting down with the MLA for some need in our community and probably get some money out of them. I don't think that's an issue. We could still do that, but I'm not ready to solve the whole world. Like, there are a lot of provincial issues, and we're not here to solve them all. They can contact the MLA, or we can go to staff and ask staff to write a letter. I think that's the way it should be done. And when I first come on council, I don't think we are allowed to talk to our staff. We have to talk to the CAO or the department. Like, if we can't even talk to our staff, why should we be talking to other staffs and enforce issue like as a counselor? I don't agree with that. So I think it should be well advertised and let people know that your counselor like have a limitation and they cannot fix all the issue that arise on the provincial matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Musa. Next up, Councillor Eisner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have been dealing with the Department of Highways, but I guess we just won't bother doing it anymore then. It's very iffy if you get a pothole fixed. I mean, Ed Road's been bad for a long time. I mean, you start getting accidents from other cars swerving to other cars going by your potholes. I mean, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Warden.
I just want to clarify, there's no intent here to stop anyone from calling and asking to have a pothole fixed. That's not what this is about. This is about individual councillors contacting ministers of the Crown or deputy ministers of the Crown or outside organizations that council is in official negotiation or correspondence with and weighing in on those issues outside of what council is doing. And it does muddy the waters. You can't have 11 different people telling, that's why we have one employee, the CAO, because our staff can't have 11 of us telling them what we think should be done about any specific issue. And it's the same when councils, municipalities are in contact or negotiation with companies, with provincial departments or whatever. You have the councils at the ministerial level, at the department, you have the councils corresponding and talking to those people. But can you imagine if they had 11 councillors from East Hants contacting them with this, well, yes, but how come you haven't answered yet? Or what about this? Or what about that? And then the next municipality over maybe has 10 councillors, and the next one might have 15, the next one might have 6. And it's just not the way we have ever done things. And I don't think it's the way that things should be done. I think there has to be a clear line of communication when it comes to that. No problem. Like I said, when I get my first call is to that number that somebody in Cape Breton answers, and I explain where the pothole is and the problem. They make note of it, they give me a number. I also encourage the resident to do the same thing, because the more complaints, the better. And if it's a really bad situation that's been ongoing for a while, I then follow up with the MLA and say, this has been an issue. This residents have reported it, I've reported it, here's my tracking number or whatever you call it. And he goes from there. On rare occasions, I would call the area manager about something myself. I usually don't. I usually leave the MLA to contact the area manager for the simple reason I don't know the area manager, and I think the MLA has more drag than I do to contact the area manager. But it's not about those types of things. It's about muddying the waters of the lines of communication between the municipality on municipal issues and blurring those lines of communication. That's what it's about. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Warden. Next up, Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm hearing a lot of different opinions on this, and some the same. I do just want to say that, you know, I've been here, this is my 4th year, and no, I don't call about someone's missing garbage can anymore, that's for sure, like I might have done the first week I was in council, but I guess when I know that staff is involved in, you know, the tear up of the road down on the number 2 down by the Magnolia last year and everything that was going on with it, obviously that's being handled. Or, you know, flooding with CN, it's being handled. Or, you know, the crosswalk or lack of crosswalk in Enfield. So those are things I'm not going to call about. However, I am the elected official of the residents in District 1. And they call me with expectation because they voted me in and I'm the frontline person for them. So, you know, I do feel like I should be able to pick up the phone, and I use transportation or Department of Public Works as an example because probably that right now the potholes from Don McNeil's to Avery's are, you know, every second day I'm getting a phone call or an email from a different resident or sometimes the same. My first action is to give them the number and the email for TIR. 2 weeks later when they call me back and say, yeah, they gave me a ticket number, or 3 weeks later nothing came of it, then I will pick up the phone and make a call for that. And while we can say, well, that's just TIR, it certainly wouldn't be something that I would bring for council to vote on that I do that, or I wouldn't think that it would be. But let's say, you know, Councillor Rhino was talking about the Department of Environment. Well, no, I wouldn't know what you had on with the what's involved with East Hants and the Department of Environment. But I would like to think that if a resident had an issue and they weren't sure, or they wanted me as their counselor just to call and get clarification on something, that calling, as he said, a field person or just a general number and having a civilized conversation or asking a question so I could have an answer to take back, I wouldn't see that as not permissible. So while you may think this is very clear, it seems a little gray to me. And that's my feeling on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McPhee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I must say that Councillor Garden Cole just expressed a lot of what I was thinking. So I'd just like to make a couple of statements. First of all, sorry I mentioned that I know a deputy minister. I didn't mean I would be calling him or that anybody would call anybody. That just happened to you. I know a lot of people through many parts of government. So that's all, and federal too. So just let's drop that part of it. Now, Councillor Garden Cole just summed up a lot of what I was thinking, and I think the problem is I understood the intent of this right off. I understood what you meant. Having been there, you don't want everybody calling you as you go higher up, and council. Anything that council was dealing with, certainly I would hope any councillor would have the good judgment not to call government on that. Now, unfortunately, some of the explanation we've given saying that's the intent of this, that's not what you see in the wording. I'm not against the intent of what it is, I just don't think it's properly worded, and I don't think that that's going to achieve those goals. I think it does certainly limit us to who we can talk to, and we could be opening ourselves up to complaints from members of the public because we just contact a local person, and this person, for whatever reason, doesn't like council, doesn't like this particular councillor, puts in a complaint because it's against this policy. So I'm not against the intent of the policy, I just think it needs to be reworded. So I wouldn't be able to support it in this form. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next up, Counselor Tingley.
Through the chair. I just wanted to comment on one comment that Councillor Musa meant about not being able to contact staff. We most definitely are allowed to contact staff to ask questions, but again, it's just friendly, effective communication where you're not attacking people. And, you know, I'm not aware of any situation here. I don't know what has brought this about because I'm not aware of any problems that have been created as a result of this. At least nobody's brought it forward here, why it is even an issue. I'm not aware of any muddying of issues. If there is, put it on the table. I myself had contacted a minister a couple of times, and on one occasion, a minister got back to me and just evaded the question. I didn't bother going back to say anything, you're evading the question. I just respectfully asked a question. She came back with a response, and it was a friendly exchange. There was no issue at all. Nothing ever come back to me that they were upset. I've been in contact with people at the Department of Education, Social Services, Roads, DNR, and been able to help people. Like, I don't think communication, good, friendly communication, where you're trying to get to the bottom of things, as long as you don't have your finger in somebody's chest trying to force them to do something. But there is an incident. Councillor Garden Cole referred to the CN culverts that, you know, my constituents have been supplying me with a ton of information to provide to these people to try to persuade to them to check their culverts. So I'm passing this on. And if I'm not allowed to communicate, I can go back to them and say, look, council's passed this motion and I can't collect this information, or I can collect it from you, but I can no longer do anything with it.
Why couldn't, like in that instance, why wouldn't you pass it on to the MP? Because CN's a national organization.
I passed it on to everybody. I passed it on to council, CN, the MP, and the MLA. Everybody is aware of that situation. And I'm not saying anything other than the first question we asked: would somebody check this and see if it's an issue? That's just, and it's been 8 months and we still don't have an answer. But I'm having good, friendly communications with the public relations person at CN right now. I don't have my finger in his chest. He's very cordial about it. We'll see where things go. Why anybody would ever want to shut that down, I have no idea. You know, it's a gag order is what it is.
I think that comment is not in order there, Counselor. That's not, there's nothing here that says a gag order. It's formalizing the process of communication.
But, and it's against laws that already exist, I think.
You're entitled to your opinion.
I am.
Next up, Warden.
We're getting close to straying into personnel issues and areas here. But since the counselor raised the CN issue, I will say the municipality is in communication with CN and trying to work through the proper channels. CN has just hired a new public persona who did contact me with his contact information, which I passed on to the director, who is working through the communication and that with CN. Any individual counselor is not aware, but the director is working to set up a meeting in the very near future with this individual to have further discussions. There's no reason that anything provided by the public related to that could not be provided to the department who is in the negotiation or in the correspondence with CN. I do not feel that it's appropriate for individual counselors to take on negotiations or whatever with CN or a ministerial level or whatever over things that we're already working through officially as a council. That is the problem. And it's not meant to muddy the waters. I understand that completely, but it still does. Because now this person at CN doesn't only have to respond to the municipality of East Hants, he may have to respond to Councillor A, B, C, D, and E, and try to juggle over what came from who and what's the real problem here. That's the issue. As far as advocating for residents on local issues with the area manager or with local environment, if someone has a sewer, there can be wording added to this. I think the CAO even came up with something that said, you know, local officials at that level or whatever. That's not what this is intended to do. And maybe we can massage the wording. But it's intended for council to be the voice of council on issues and not to have these people getting multiple correspondences from multiple people that do cause confusion. And we do not want, if we're in negotiation with a provincial department, I'll use environment for example, over a wetland alteration or something. We don't, and it may be taking longer than we think it should. But we may not know how many correspondences back and forth have happened and how close this is to getting resolved. The last thing we need is someone else coming in out of left field saying, we haven't heard back from you in 6 months. What's going on here? And we can't do that, or at least that's my opinion. I've been here over 25 years. I've always understood and respected those boundaries, but it just seemed that at this time it was necessary to formalize some of what has always been the way things have done since I've been here. And so those are my comments. I'm transportation staff, environment staff, or whatever. I do not have any problem with that. But I do think it's important to clearly, and massage this wording, to clearly spell out the expectation and the role of council versus individual councilors. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Wait for this to work. CAO, you're up next. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I was just going to suggest some wording on the screen here. If we added directly after on a local district issue to say, or advocating for constituent with local provincial area staff, and then carry on. I think that's, from what I've heard this morning, that seems to be the issue for most councillors, sort of not wanting to be tied at that very local level. I was also going to say the example of potholes is sort of one that councillors are, you know, it's springtime, it's on everybody. There's absolutely nothing to stop a councillor from calling in and saying, you know, the potholes on Enfield Road are deplorable or whatever. But there would, the protocol would say that you're not, as a councillor, going to write a letter from your council email to the minister saying the roads in East Hants are deplorable and you need to do something about it. Like, that's the distinction between those two. So I want, absolutely, you can call and tell people about potholes and, you know, a certain road even, or whatever at that local level. The other comment I just want to address is the, you know, not being allowed to talk to staff. When counselors first come on board, the message is always, you have one staff person, and any direction of what needs to be done through the CAO. And that holds true. So you as counselors are not, through the MGA and through our CAO model that you've adopted, are not permitted to direct staff to do things. You know, that is very relaxed here as far as conversations. There's nothing to stop you from having a conversation with one of the directors, for example. If it goes to a more local level, many of you talk with Andrea, for example, on waste issues, you know, but what we can't have, and what the MGA, the Municipal Government Act, doesn't allow, is for you to direct staff. So to tell them that this road is deplorable, you need to go grade it today. Those things are protected under the MGA and the way that we do business here. So I just wanted to clarify that, you know, there is that conversation is healthy and good, but the direction of staff is what we try and protect against, because again, they can't have 11 people directing them in different ways. They have one person to direct them, and that would be me, and I take my direction from you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, CAO. Next up, Councillor Musa.
Well, thank you. I want to just add a little bit. I think that is a protection for us. And we have seen what happened when the flood happened here in Elmsdale. I won't talk about it. Probably it's a camera issue or something. But one councillor was attacked for something that he had nothing to do with. So think about that for other councillors that being attacked for an issue that never created, and they were expected to shovel ditches and stuff like that. So that's not what we're here for, guys. We're here to do our municipal issues, and if we can help for a pothole or something. But I think with TIR, what happened is the more the people call, the more being done. That's what I was told, and that's what I go to, and I always give the number, and that's all I have to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Musa. Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I first read it, I just felt like all the agencies and departments that were listed really left us with our hands tied. But now that you've added that one little line there, I'm satisfied with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rhino.
Yeah, just to clarify, in any correspondence I have or any discussions with anyone on different levels, I clearly state I am not speaking on behalf of council. I'm speaking on behalf of my residents. So I clarify that right off the bat. So, you know, I think, to me, that's where a lot of this confusion is, right? I'm not speaking for a council. I can't speak for council. An individual council can't speak for council unless they're directed to do so. But they should be able to speak as individual councilors on needs from their area. So as long as that doesn't run against what the municipality is trying to do as a whole. So that's how I handle it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McPhee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Councillor Rhino's point, that's exactly what I was thinking, that maybe we could include something in the wording that councillors are not to represent, that they're speaking on behalf of council. Would there be a way to put that in there? I think that's the biggest intent of this, is that we can't represent ourselves as speaking for council. Even when I have contacted people, I don't even add.
The last lines, councillors do not speak on behalf of council on the issue.
Yeah, but then maybe we should reword, I know that's in that, but when you start off with the top part and then you put that at the bottom, individual councillors may not speak on behalf of council, that's like a separate thing saying that also individual councillors cannot speak on behalf of council. I just don't think that still gets the wording in
The
there.
CAO just wrote clearly indicating they're not representing council.
Oh, okay, that certainly, that makes a big difference, I think. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Okay,
I don't think we
there's
got it.
been no motion yet. Warden.
I will move the motion that was just, let's get it back on the screen. I will read it as soon as it.
So you just say as amended.
Well, oh, they'd like to have it read. Okay, I would move, we have 3 changes in the recommendation here. So I would move the recommendations in the report, change number 1 and change number 2, and change number 3, which has been amended to read, except when dealing with the local MLA or MP on a local district issue or advocating for a constituent with provincial local area staff, clearly indicating they are not representing council, council members shall not engage or communicate with members of other levels of government, government departments, agencies, municipal vendors, or other corporations on specific municipal matters unless authorized to do so by council or the warden. If council has directed staff to engage members of other levels of government or an organization on a specific topic, local or otherwise, individual councilors may not speak on behalf of council on the issue.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. We'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed 10-1 with Councillor Tingley voting nay. Next up, beautification grant, CAO. I knew there's a reason why I wanted to skip that one.
Mr. Chairman?
Sorry.
So the report in front of you is a question of granting through your beautification funds to specifically to heritage district properties. There was a motion that came forward from council in March that staff review the guidelines for beautification grants to expand what the beautification funds can be spent on, in particular for repairs for nonprofit heritage buildings like churches. So specifically, the church in question is a church that was built in 1831 on Eder Road in Mount Uniacke, and the building needs a new roof from a storm damage that was that happened last fall. The Union Church is a registered municipal heritage property, and the Union Church Trustee Association manages the property and does have an active registration with joint stocks. So they are grantable under most of your policies. So the issue with the Heritage Fund is it's limited to $5,000, and the councillors of the area have indicated that they do have some beautification reserve funds, and that they would like to use those funds towards this church enhancement project for the good of the community. So on April 5th, the balances in the districts, now these can change as councillors allocate money, but as you can see, districts 8 and 9 have healthy balances in their beautification funds, and that's what we're going to speak about today. So the recommendation is that council direct staff to facilitate a grant under the Heritage Incentive Program for this church, which would be $5,000, and that council also approves using beautification grants from districts 8 and 9 to fund the Union Church roof project, and this would be on a one-off basis. The roof project itself is $22,000 plus tax that they're looking for, and we just put in here some of the criteria for beautification. It does specifically say that property repairs and maintenance are not eligible. However, the two districts, two councillors in districts 8 and 9 have indicated that it's difficult for them to allocate their beautification funds. And as you can see, their balances are healthy in those funds. A little bit about the Heritage Property Incentive Grant in the report. And then looking at the overall grant program, part of the issue was, is that council has very clear policies that you don't fund religious sanctuaries and whatnot. But this church, although it is called the Union Church, the intention would be that this property become more of a community hall and community gathering space for Mount Uniacke. And it's not going to be used as a church per se. And it hasn't been used as a church for some time, I don't think. So we did look at different alternatives throughout, whether you could use beautification funding entirely, whether we could look at changing the policies to allow for heritage to be done under beautification. I think that muddies the water a little bit going forward. If the intent really is that we reallocate these funds for this specific project, then I think that's what council should do, is just do a one-time allocation. Option 1 is being recommended, that we do the grant under the Heritage Program, and then council support this organization through the beautification funds from those two districts. So that is the recommendation. You could go through all kinds of different policy changes and whatnot, but looking at this and talking it through at the staff level, we think this is probably a one-off. Even speaking with Councillor Musa earlier today, once this building becomes a gathering place for people in the community, then you can start to look at district recreation funds and things like that for this as well. So the recommendation is to keep it simple and to use the two funds as recommended in the motion.
Thank you, CIO. First up, Warden Rolston.
I would move a recommended motion.
Moved and seconded. On before the motion, Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, the trustee of the church have done a lot of work to this church. Like they did the foundation a few years back, and they spent over like $25,000 to keep it safe, like to keep it was sinking. So they fixed the foundation, and all the biggest expense is the roof now. And once the roof is done, they have small like doors and painting and stuff, and they have to. And the reason for this big ask is to be able to upgrade their electricals, so they can get people in and being used as a community hall or for weddings. And I was told by many people that they love that church. They get married in that church, and they hate to see it going down. And as a counselor, I like to ask you guys for this ask to approve this ask for my community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Musa. Councillor Rhino.
It's not specific to the motion, so I'll hold, but I'd like to have a chance to ask a question after the
After?
motion is dealt with, please.
Understood. I'll just get you to rekey up so you're rekeyed. Warden Rolston.
I'm just going to add that I look at this too. This is an important building in the community, and if funding is, if folks can't find the funding and do what needs to be done so they can use it and for community things and raise money to keep it up, I'm sure a building with a new roof will be far more beautiful than a building that's falling down and becoming derelict in the community. So I don't see it as a big stretch, and I think it is a good idea that if something like this comes up, it does come to council. It's not left to the individual councillor of a district to say, yes, I'll give you $20,000 or whatever to fix this, because it is outside the policy. But I see it as not being so far outside the policy that it doesn't support the policy. So I'm supportive of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. And I'm just going to turn it over to the Warden to add my comments as well. Yes, the Union Church, it's basically goes back in history. It was a school. It was a non-denominational church. So depending upon, like, they had services for all the different types of things. It has the only cemetery also attached to it as well in the community, and it dates back quite a ways. And the group has tried for years. Councillor Musa mentioned that they got the foundation done a few years ago at a large expense because the building had to be jacked up. The foundation had to be poured underneath it. That storm that hit and caused damage to the pool and everything else also hit this building very hard. And to keep the upgrades, as many people know, historical upgrades in a historical property cost way more than a normal property. So to upgrade and replace the roof as historically accurate is a lot more than if they were just to shingle it. So I do believe this is a worthwhile project, and I thank all the comments made by councillors as well. The intent is to, once it's secured with the roof, then they can start to work on the inside, upgrade the electrical, and they've mentioned they want to make this a museum, a meeting place, a gathering place, and kind of a symbol of the historic community, because it is the only historical building other than the Uniacke House Provincial Park that is in anywhere in the Uniacke district right now. So I again would say that agreeing with the warden, funding like this, if it's available, should come from a motion of council and not be just left up to the councillors, and I would appreciate the support. Thank you.
Councillor Rhino to the motion?
No, it's after.
Okay.
After, yeah.
No one else is left to speak, so question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously, and I'll turn the chair back to you. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Warden. And not to the motion, Councillor Rhino.
Through you to staff, where does beautification of cemeteries fall? Does that fall within the scope of the beautification fund? Yeah. Okay, no, that's all I wanted clearance,
Okay.
clarification.
Thank you, Councillor. All right, seeing nothing left on the agenda for corporate residential services, I would move that we adjourn and reconvene in Parks, Recreation, and Culture with Councillor Rhino. Well, we'll have a break after that one. Okay, so moved. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Yeah, but that's what we told them. And it's like all one little property. The other thing is our community signs got destroyed too. The last storm, the wind. Yeah, they're eligible too. So you're right there, Councillor.
No, that's right.
You what? I tried to get you a break. They wouldn't give it. They wouldn't. What? All right, call this meeting of Parks, Recreation, and Culture Committee to order. First order of business would be approval of the minutes of March 19, 2024. What is your wish?
Second.
Moved by Councilor Green, seconded by Councilor Mitchell, Deputy Warden Green, excuse me. So I apologize. Seconded by Councilor Mitchell. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary of mine, motion is carried. Next order of business would be tourism grants. Ms. Doothright, you are taking that. I can't even see.
Just waiting here. Yeah. Is that your desktop? Yeah, it is. No, sorry, the one that's on the screen. Yep. Yep. It's thinking. Yeah, so you probably have it on your second screen upstairs. I see. I've done it. Please hold. Move over screens. Oh, display. Show only on one? Yeah, sure. Swap that over. Did not like my desktop today.
Very rare that I'm
Yeah.
rescuing technical issues.
Tech support. Yeah, sure. Sure. Close this one up. There we go. All right. With that technical issue out of the way, we are going to go over the 2024 tourism grant applications. This is an annual grant program, so comes this time of year to council. The deadline is typically February 28th. This year, we did see 5 applications by that deadline. All of the applicants were found to be eligible. And just at a glance, the approved budget for a tourism grant within operational budget is $40,000. The total amount requested this year in some by the groups was $42,825, but we will go over the recommended amount of funding is less than that, just $50 over budget. So I'll go through this a little further in, but based on withholding some unused grant funds from a group from last year, the recommended amount of funding would be $40,050, and that nominal overage could be covered easily by operational or reserve. So these are the 5 groups that applied this year, and I'll be able to go through and show you the details of each application a little further down, but the East Hants Historical Society has requested $5,000. The Maitland District Development Association has requested $13,500. Walton Area Development Association has requested $4,050. Chart Society, who are located in Maitland, have requested $11,300. That amount is based on reserving some funding based on unused grant from last year. And the final group, which is a new group for this particular grant program, is Gore Trails, and I can go over that addition to the list in further detail in just a moment. So just as an overview, Tourism Grant Program provides single-year financial support to nonprofit community organizations who operate a tourism attraction or facility in East Hants. They must focus on attracting visitors from local, national, and international markets. Funding from the program supports tourism-related programs that enhance our community identity, our values and experiences. The applications are evaluated using the criteria below. So essentially, as mentioned, they have to operate a tourism attraction or activity. This can be event-based as well. The project has to have a viable budget. They have to have community support, which includes council, their district counselor seeing the application in advance. And there must be a direct relationship between the tourism sector and the activity which they're applying for funding. So I will go straight into the applications. You'll notice there's a pending external funding column. So some of these applicants are also applying for summer job grant funding and other provincial or federal funding. So we always like to note that as well. First of all is Chart Society. They are a cultural heritage art society group based in Maitland. This year is a bit of a banner year for the group because it is the 150th anniversary of the launch of the W.D. Lawrence ship, which to this day is Canada's largest wooden-hulled ship. It was launched in Maitland 150 years ago this year. So they have a few big projects on their schedule. They're applying for costs to cover several different events and workshops. They want to bring in some bigger musical acts for the summer, and they also are applying for advertising costs to promote these events and workshops, print materials, and then you'll note they actually have a request for some new refrigerators. This group owns 2 buildings in Maitland, one of them being the High Tide Art and Community Center. So this is where they have most of their programs, and they are requesting funding for new refrigerators for storing food and beverages for the events. So their requested amount of funding was $14,075. That is the, per policy, that's 50% of the cost of the project.
If I could interrupt just right now.
Sure.
Could I have somebody please check the thermostat, please? Because I see people putting their cold coats on, and it's fairly cold on both sides, so seems to be an issue that's reoccurring. Thank you.
All right, I'll just, I'll resume there for you. So that's Chart Society. I will note their requested funding was $14,075. The recommended funding, as listed in the motion, is withholding some unused grant funds that they had trouble using last year. They met some challenges within the group. And with that in mind, I'll get into this a little later in the financial section, but we would be looking to support that group additional this year as staff, just to ensure that they don't have any challenges spending the funding if council chooses to move forward. So the next group is East Hants Historical Society. They're applying for funding for staffing for the Lower Selma Museum. This is located on Highway 215. And for those of you who haven't been able to get out and enjoy it, this is where they move their archives that are typically stored in the business park for the winter. They move those archives out there for the summer at the museum, and they welcome folks from all around. They are also applying for some costs to improve the museum with some door repairs, shelving, electrical work. This is the same amount that they've asked for before, the $5,000. Maitland District Development Association. This group operates 2 facilities in the area, so Gallery 215, as well as Beyond the Wharf Artisans, which is located at Dawson Dowell Park. They are applying for staffing costs as they hire staff for Gallery 215, and they're also hoping to do some hands-on workshop experiences, such as learn to craft, learn to pottery, learn rug hooking. They had a rug hooking workshop last year, for example. So the cost of promoting those events and hosting them is part of this $13,500 ask. And I would keep in mind the $13,500 is going to be supporting 2 attractions as they operate 2. So the next group would be Walton Area Development Association. Though this group operates the Walton Lighthouse. They're applying for funds to staff the lighthouse for 9 weeks. And they also run a small gift shop on site there. So the student typically works out of the gift shop. And they're also applying for money to cover their Nova Scotia webcam fee. So that is in the amount of $4,050. And the final group is Gore Trails. They're registered as Empire Trails with joint stocks. This group may sound familiar. They've gone through the District Recreation Fund program before, and they have put in a request with tourism grant this year and were found eligible based on, they meet the criteria of being a not-profit association. The trail system, it's a mountain bike trail system in Gore, attracts folks mainly from outside the municipality a lot of the time. Last year, they sold 342 trail passes, and this would have been to families, individuals, day passes, and they're working toward attracting a larger audience. This aligns with our tourism policy, council's tourism policy, in that we're tasked with enhancing our natural attractions, developing multi-use trails. So there are a few reasons that this application meets policy. And the specific project that they're looking for $6,200 in funding for relates to improving the entrance of their trailhead, adding roadside signage, creating a better visitor information landing spot. So when a visitor would arrive, they would see a trail map, they would have a kiosk. And the other part of the project would be some groundwork to create additional parking. And they would like to increase space for their event area and potentially into the future have a camping area for these events. So that's an overview of those applications. I would just like to go into, I've talked a little bit about the strategic alignment, but the tourism grant program aligns with our strong community key strategy in the strategic plan, as well as supports the East Hants tourism strategy. And finally, I'll quickly go over the financial considerations. As mentioned, tourism grant policy allots $40,000 in funding each year. The total funding request was a little over that at $42,825. But upon review of the final reports from last year's grants, Chart Society did report $2,747.48 of their tourism grant from 2023 as unspent due to some challenges they met as a group. So we are, as staff, recommending that this amount rounded to $2,775 for clarity's sake. We're recommending withholding this amount from them in this grant request simply based on the fact that they could return last year's money or they could have it taken from this year's request. And that's our recommendation. And council may have questions about that, and I'm happy to answer. But I will scroll right back up to the recommended motion, and I'm happy to take questions or discussion. Thank you.
Councilors, you've heard the report. I see several people on to speak, and I would like to speak myself, so I do want to put that out there. First up would be Councilor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know the fourth top one there, usual, and the new one, I don't mind. We have a lot of trails that many people use, but if we want to go that way, we should increase the fund because we have many trails that's gonna come up. Like we have the Mananma River is very famous. A lot of people use it, and for sure when they see that, they're gonna come up for some fund. And we have a couple trails in Mount Uniacke. I don't know, like a lot of people come from everywhere to use them. So just be prepared. That's what I want. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Musa. Next up, Warden Rolston.
Thank you. And I'll just comment specific to Gore Trails. There is a lot of local use of the trails that this group has, but this particular ask, they do host significant mountain bike events that bring in, many people outside of East Hants. It is a tourist type attraction for those folks who do the mountain biking thing. And apparently it's very well known in that community and well liked, and hence that's the tourism connection. But I did have a question on the Walton Area Development Association's ask, because I saw that part of that was to pay their webcam fees. And I just am wondering, we own the Walton Lighthouse, and we have webcams at Burncode, correct? Why would we expect the organization that looks after the lighthouse for us to pay the webcam fees? And I know maybe it's this hand to this hand. If they get the grant, we're still paying for it, but it just seems to be a little superfluous for them to have to apply for money to pay for their webcam every year. Maybe we should just pay it along with the Burncode ones. I guess, is there a reason that doesn't happen is my question.
Who's taking that?
I can speak to what we've done before.
Go ahead.
The addition of the burnt coat webcam last year has probably kept this top of mind. This is a recurring request from Walton and Area Development Association. And we could certainly talk as staff about moving those expenses internally and that would allow Walton and Area Development Association to ask to maybe cover other costs through tourism grant. They're, of the groups, I will say, the most conservative year to year with their ask in the tourism grant fund, perhaps because we do help cover. We pay insurance internally. They provide their paperwork and we cover their insurance costs. We have another separate staffing grant they also get and another separate operating grant they also get. So those are 3 grants they don't apply for. Those are just in operating budget and we release them when they request for the funds. So we could talk internally if it's council's wish to move the webcam fee internal as well and add it to their operating grant. And that's a discussion that we could have with council's direction.
And I'm not, I know that however it's done, council pays for it,
Yeah.
and that we do fund them. But I just thought, as with all volunteers, I
Yeah.
know some of the folks in that organization, and if that was just one thing they didn't, it's more for ease than anything else. If they didn't have to apply for that every year and you
Yeah.
know. That's all, and I'm quite happy to leave that with staff unless somebody else wants to move an amendment or something, but I would suggest looking at that. That's
Yeah.
just my question.
Is that
Thank
all,
you.
Warden?
That's it.
Thank you. Deputy Warden Green?
I would move the recommended motion.
It's been moved and seconded. I was on before the motion, so I will turn the chair over to the warden. You got her? All right, through me to staff, I guess. Is this through you, okay? Gord Trails, is that a private business?
So they're a not-for-profit association with a board of directors. The discussion of land ownership has probably come up before with district rec funds because they have a land use agreement. The nonprofit association operates a land use agreement with the owners of the land. So part of this land is on Courthouse Hill Farm, and the owners of that land on Courthouse Hill Farm have a land use agreement with this not-for-profit association to operate the trails, if that's clear.
So Gord Trails is not for
Yes,
profit
yes.
itself.
That's the first thing, first requirement for everyone to apply to this
All right.
fund, yeah.
So you're saying Gore Trails is a board, they're not for
Yeah.
profit.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned during your presentation that they would host events.
Yeah.
Would that be a for-profit event?
So as with some of the other applicants, when they host events as a not-for-profit, they may make funds off of the event, but that would be to help fund other things that they're doing as a group. So if the Gore Trails hosts an event and they charge a fee, that would be hopefully they would have to be using the funds for their own not-for-profit activities. So that money goes back into their operating fund to help improve their trails and grow their services as a not-for-profit.
So if I can be clear, if they have an event, let's say, this is only an example.
Mm-hmm.
If they have an outdoor concert with a big name, whoever coming.
Yep.
And there is a fee for an entrance to adhere to the concert. Can I be assured that all those funds will be put into Gore Trails, this not-for-profit group, and none of it goes back to a private company or an individual?
Well,
I think it would be the same as any other group. They're a registered organization, and yes, that would be the expectation. We don't know what costs they might incur if they hosted something. Those would be paid. But as with any other organization, any monies that they make do go back in and provides, I know, they get a lot of in-kind too.
Very
but
much so.
it helps to provide the money they need to build the bridges and to do those things to keep the trails up. That's what it's for.
and we can't speak to the operation of every not-profit group, but that is what that's how they're bound to operate by legislation around nonprofit operations.
But I remember the discussions in the past, and that was a stickler for me, was these profits not going into public or private hands.
But we have,
If that is your case, that you're saying that any profits of events that we held will be going back into a nonprofit
Yes.
organization, then that's a different story.
that is certainly the expectation with every one of these, every one of these. And,
That's all.
okay,
Question.
question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously. I'll turn the chair back to you, Counselor.
All right, thank you, Warden. Just before we get Atlanta, we know that the volunteer awards is coming forth this Friday night. Would you like to give any kind of update on that, or any do's, don'ts, show up times, or anything? This is your opportunity.
6:30 start. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, the volunteer awards night is on Friday. I believe start time is 6:30 with sort of casual reception before the awards themselves begin. We're excited. We have quite a large number of volunteers this year. I think there's 22, 23 recipients and 8 firefighter long service awards. So certainly we look forward to having all of council attend, and if you haven't RSVP'd, please do so. You can let either myself know or Aurora. I think a number of you have, so I appreciate that. And aside from that, we look forward to recognizing all of the great volunteers in our community.
Thank you very much for that report. Before we head to volunteer rec and seeing no one left to speak or ask questions, I will now entertain a motion for adjournment to go to for a break and return to planning and development with Councillor Mitchell in the chair.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councillor Green, seconded by Councillor McPhee. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary of mine, motion carried.
and Development Committee to order. I'd like to welcome our public members, Candace and Sam, for joining us early this morning, taking you away from your normal duties. The first thing on the agenda is approval of minutes of March 19, 2024. Moved and second. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. First item on the agenda is accessory dwelling unit fees. Debbie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the recent Housing Accelerator Fund agreement between the municipality and the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, one of the projects that the East Hants committed to was the promotion of accessory dwelling units. In addition to the promotion of accessory dwelling units, East Hants also committed to waiving building permit fees until the end of 2026. East Hants began permitting accessory dwelling units in 2016. They are permitted generally wherever a single unit dwelling is permitted. Accessory dwelling units can come in the form of a secondary suite, which is that first image here, a garage suite, or a garden suite. East Hants has issued permits for 12 accessory dwelling units over the past 2 years and can expect to do about another 20 permits over the next until the end of the agreement time, and that would be the ones that would have the fee waived. A typical permit cost for an ADU is approximately $300. As a result, the fee waiver would be expected to cost approximately $6,000 in lost revenue over 32 months. Accessory dwelling units can be up to 80% of the floor area of the main dwelling. This type of housing is seen as a way to introduce gentle density increases into established neighborhoods without the need for additional infrastructure. Accessory dwelling units also provide much needed housing that can be more affordable than other forms of housing. The recommendation is that the building permit fees related to accessory dwelling units be waived until December 31st, 2026, and the recommended motion is below. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. The motion's there. What is? Councilor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in full support of that motion, and my only thing is if we can bring the money from the fund, this way the resident won't end up paying in the budget more tax. Like instead of raising the budget for 6,000, we should bring it from that reserve to cover that. Thank you.
I believe we can do that. I'm not sure if the CAO wants to expand or not.
Okay, just a minute. Go ahead, CAO.
Through you, my understanding was that the Accelerator Fund would be used to fund these types of initiatives. They're initiatives under the agreement, so we can actually use that money.
As long as we don't have to ease our budget.
No, we do not, no.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, I seen the dimensions of the accessory dwelling units. In my area, we have a lot of people that have really small, that had smaller, older homes, and they've built quite large garages. The garages are actually bigger than their homes. So if they were to do a garage suite above their garage, that floor space would probably actually be bigger than the floor space of their home. And I'm just wondering, like, would that limit the amount of space they could use in their garage? Or if they were still going to make the upper level a livable space, would that procure them from doing that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you'd have to meet the minimum area set out in the accessory dwelling unit standards. So that means they wouldn't be able to use the entire garage space. But we haven't run across that too many times. I mean, most of the applications that we've had, the accessory dwelling unit can go right above the garage, and we haven't had it say that it's been too big, so it hasn't come up as an issue. And the reason we tied it to this size is actually for the accessory dwelling units for the single unit dwellings. It's really closely related to the building code requirements because under the building code, they have different standards for what they consider accessory dwelling units. So we tied the land use bylaw regulations to those sets of accessory dwelling unit standards. And we want to make sure that the units are actually accessory to the to the primary dwelling. If somebody wanted, for example, if they had a larger lot and they had a large garage and then a house, and they could potentially subdivide it, they don't have to subdivide it, but if they had the ability to subdivide, they could potentially apply, if it's zoned R2 or rural use, to have 2 dwellings on the property, which would then give them the full use of the.
So in the case where somebody's garage floor space is larger than their house floor space, and they wanted to put the second level as an accessory dwelling unit, are they able to apply for a variance or anything that to maximize that space?
So you, Mr. Chair, no, it's accessory, so it has to be smaller than the main dwelling unit.
But your garage count as, sorry. Can I say something?
Yeah, when your turn comes.
So could they then flip it and make the garage the primary and the existing place the accessory in labeling it that way? I'm just looking at like, right now, we're in a situation where housing is really expensive, and there's a lot of families moving back home to live in the same properties as their parents. So the parents are living in a smaller house, which suits their needs, but these families are moving home with children, and they need 2 to 3 bedrooms, and there's that space for it to be built over top of their existing garage. They're not building a new garage.
Yeah.
Would there be a way to reclassify each as that? Because the last thing I want to see is us have a policy that allows accessory dwelling units, but all of a sudden we're making it not feasible for it to be able to be used for the intended use as accessory dwelling too.
We actually have, you can do that. So as long as it meets the regulations in the land use bylaw, we have people that have done purposely that. They have built their garage with the unit above, and then they built it to such a size that they can then build the house, and then they'd be able to classify their garage suite as accessory dwelling unit and then have the house separate. So it allows them to live on the lot while they can build their house, and saves them some money, so they're not paying rent while they're building.
But is it able to be done in reverse? So all of a sudden, there's a house already there that's small.
Yeah.
There's a garage existing that's larger, and they want to then renovate.
As long as they meet the minimum
And they
requirements of
can
the
flip
land
it
use
back and
bylaw.
forth. So they could say, once we renovate this garage, upper part of the garage, which is going to be larger than the existing dwelling, this will become the primary dwelling, and that will now become the accessory dwelling.
Yeah, as long as you meet the land use bylaw regulations, so the house would have to be under that
80%.
80% or 80 square meters. Yeah.
No, because it's just, I hope it doesn't happen, but looking throughout the communities as I drive, even up here, you see some really small houses, some really large garages, especially in the rural area, that, this really could have an impact if we get in that case. I just want to make sure we have the ability to at some point address that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rhino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to staff. If you had a dwelling that you were renting out, and could the person put a additional dwelling unit onto that and then rent that out themselves?
Through Mr. Chair, I'm not quite sure I understand your question, Councillor Rhino.
So if you have a dwelling unit, right?
Yes.
Is there any way that let's say the owner of that dwelling unit can take this here and put an additional on it, up to 80% of the square, and then rent that out? So then, realistically, you could have contractors coming in, doing this, rental properties, doing this, and then building a piece on, and then not having to pay the permit fee. Is that a possibility?
Through you,
If
Mr.
this
Chair.
passes?
It's open to anyone who owns the property. So if you own a property, whether you're a developer or a property owner, and you have a house and you want to do an addition or something, you could do an accessory dwelling unit and then rent that unit out, yes.
So is this part that we have to do on that to meet the grant from the
Yes.
Housing Auxiliary Fund?
Yes.
There's parts of that Housing Auxiliary Fund, I think, is, in my opinion, it is a joke, and I cannot support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Warden Rolston.
Well, I'm gonna make one comment before I start. $5.8 million is not a joke to me, to assist us with housing needs. I have a question around this. What about, and I'm just gonna use an example, I know someone in my district who is in the queue, and I don't know if the permit's been pulled yet or not, but he's in the process of applying for a permit for this accessory dwelling unit for a family member. Is this, if we pass this, is this gonna be grandfathered, or is he gonna have to pay the permit fees? Because this is exactly what he's doing.
If they've already issued the building permit, then it's done, but if they could hold off until, we've told our building inspectors that it is coming, so we were asking them to try to hold off on any permits that were in the queue, but as soon as it passes council, then we would be able to waive those fees. So we've been letting
Is
people
there
know
any
that.
way we could retroactively waive those fees back to a certain date? Yeah, to April 1.
To April 1?
I don't know if that needs added to the motion. Starting retroactively from April 1 until December 31st, 2026.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Counselor McPhee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, I'd like to just get a clarification on basically Counselor Perry's point. My house is 80% the size of my garage. So would I be able to turn my garage, and it's one floor, it's not like the one you have pictured with the garden suite above. Still, you'd be turning the whole building into a house. So would I be able to do that under this?
You'd still have to meet the regulations of the accessory dwelling unit regulations. So so instead of creating a garage suite, you would then be changing it over to a granny suite, correct?
Yes.
So you'd have to meet our minimum regulations, and if it was 80%, or there's another measurement there of 80 meters squared. So as long as it's not over that size, then you could potentially do that as long as you met the regulations, yes.
But the garage is bigger than the house.
Yep, so you'd have to be able to flip it, like Councilor Perry was mentioning.
Okay,
So the other suite would then become your main primary
Okay. that
unit,
would-
and then your house would become the accessory one.
Oh, okay, I see, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
And that would be fine then, even though.
that'd be
it's-
fine. As long as you met the regulations, you'd be fine that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Debbie, I talked to John once about this issue, and he told me your garage count as your main dwelling, and like if you have a house and a garage, that's your main dwelling. Then whatever you put above the garage is different. Is that true, or I think that's what John told me before.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so.
No, it was a issue in Mount Uniac. One guy have a house and a garage in the RU zone, and he's allowed, the garage is only like, should be percentage of his house,
Yes.
and he want to add to it, and I asked John that question, and he told me, your garage can help you because it's already in your like count as your whole main dwelling, and whatever you add to it, then
Through you, Mr. Chair, so your dwelling would be your footprint we would measure for the 80%, like your actual living space, your dwelling. So your garage wouldn't count towards that unless you're,
but John told me it will measure, it will do that, so.
if
No,
it's,
it was detached.
that's not the way that the development officers have been interpreting the
Okay,
regulations.
no, so I just want to throw that, like, maybe something to look at, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next up, Counselor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. So when I picture an accessory dwelling unit, and I know of a couple in my area, it's the house with a small unit in the back, say,
Yep.
for example, and they've literally built it as an accessory dwelling unit. So are you telling me that, for example, if I had a 1,100 square foot bungalow on a property, that I could build a 1,600 square foot building
Through,
and reverse the,
through Mr. Chair, no, there's a maximum square footage of 80 meters squared. So that's as big as your unit can be. What Councillor Perry was referring to and Councillor McPhee is the small houses.
small homes?
Yeah,
Okay.
because there's several older homes out there that are probably very small homes, especially some of the ones out in Mount Uniacke area that are just really small footprints and they have really big garages.
Okay.
And it's more out in the Mount Uniacke area that you find that.
I missed that aspect of it, and I was thinking that this would really open up to,
No.
to manipulating what people could do. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Warden Rolston.
Yes, could we have the motion back on the screen?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I move that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends that council authorize the waiving of building permit fees for accessory dwelling units retroactively to April 1st until December 31st, 2026.
So moved and second. What's your wish?
Question?
Questions being called, we'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed with the vote of 12-1 with Councilor Rhino voting nay. Thank you, Debbie. Next item on the agenda is PLN 23-012, Tammy and Joe Ferguson. Development Agreement 9 Mile River. And this is Leanne Martin. Go ahead, Leanne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is the final presentation for a development agreement application from Tammy and Joe Ferguson. So the subject properties are located at 7224 Highway 14 in 9 Mile River. Both properties are zoned the 2-dwelling unit residential R2 zone and designated established residential neighborhood. And both properties total 5,574 square meters, so 1.37 acres. And they are not located within a growth management or growth reserve area. So the applicant has requested to enter into a development agreement to allow for the operation of an educational service use on the properties, with the intention of operating a cosmetology school specifically related to the instruction of hair designing, styling, and other related practices. So there is an existing dwelling unit located on one of the properties and the other property is vacant. So the school will operate out of the existing dwelling that's there, and parking will be provided on the vacant piece of land. And the school will be located on the main level, and the intent is to have a dwelling unit located on the bottom level of the dwelling. So staff have reviewed the proposed application based on the applicable policies, and there is a detailed table of the criteria and policies in the staff report. So it's policy OS 28 that states council shall consider institutional uses in all zones by a development agreement to ensure that the institutional use is in the community's best interest, and educational services are permitted in the institutional use zone. So therefore, as per policy OS 28, the use is permitted by entering into a development agreement. And then policies IM 27 through 29 allow council to consider the development agreement and set out the evaluation criteria and conditions for the agreement. So for citizen engagement, so there was an advertisement outlining the proposal, and that was in the Chronicle Herald in January. And a letter and questionnaire were mailed to residents and property owners within 300 meters. So we sent out 46 letters and 6 were returned. So some of the comments just included an increase in water, as well as potential increase in traffic along Birch Hill Drive. Staff did not request a hydrogeological study for this application just due to the scale and size of the application, as well as Public Works did comment and said there was no impact or there's no anticipated impact to the provincial road network. And a public hearing has been scheduled for April's meeting of council, and a letter was again mailed to residents indicating them of that meeting. So staff have reviewed the proposal and found the proposal to be consistent with the policies. Therefore, staff are recommending approval, and council's decision would be appealable to the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board. And the recommendation is the Planning Advisory Committee recommend that council give final consideration and approve the development agreement. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Leanne. Councillor Head.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will move give final consideration and approve the development agreement for an educational service use of the properties identified as PID 451-23122 and 451-23114.
Seconded.
So moved in second. Say no more discussion. What's your wish?
Question.
Questions being called. We'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. Thank you, Leanne. Next item on the agenda is UNIAC Secondary Planning Survey, Planning Strategy Survey results. Debbie, you can begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as part of the UNIAC Secondary Planning Strategy, a community online survey was undertaken for 1 month from the end of January to the end of February. Over 10% of the population in the study area responded to the survey, which is considered a good response rate according to SurveyMonkey. The majority of the 470 residents who responded to the survey who were from the community of Mount Uniacke. There were some residents that responded from outside of the study area who did not indicate their location. The age of respondents ranged from 18 to over 65 years and represented a good range of residents. So one of the first questions we asked is, what did they like about living in their community? And many residents indicated that it was quiet, peaceful, country living, the people, a sense of community, close to amenities in Halifax and Sackville, the nature, woods and trails, and privacy. And I should note that attached to the staff report under Appendix A is the results of the survey results, and there's over 100 pages of written responses, so there's plenty of material to go through if anyone's interested. So the next question is, what types of new housing would you like to see in the community? And it wasn't surprising that single unit dwellings was chosen by 60% of respondents. So it's the dominant form of housing presently in the Uniacke area. And Uniacke has traditionally had a low density housing with large lots to allow for on-site services. There are residents in the area who do recognize that alternative forms of housing are required, and 40% of respondents have selected an alternative form of housing other than single-unit dwelling. Approximately 11% indicated they would like to see small apartment buildings, up to a maximum of 8 units. Another 15% of respondents indicated other. And under others, they indicated that they wanted senior housing, a mixture of all housing types, or no new housing at all. Respondents also indicated that affordable housing is required, especially for young adults and seniors. As respondents age, they would like to be able to stay in their community. This means being able to find smaller homes or one-level homes. Some respondents mentioned more compact housing like smaller apartments and townhouses where community connections can be established and the natural environment be protected. So we asked about transportation as well, and 86% of respondents cannot walk to amenities in their community. If there are new opportunities for walking, residents would like them to connect to the school, the skate park, to the local parks and waterways, and to businesses in the business park. Sidewalks and biking trails were identified as being required along Highway 1. And I should mention that sidewalks are mentioned throughout the survey results and under multiple different questions. So we asked if they commute out of the community for work, and 67% of respondents indicated that they did. Respondents identified items that could improve their commutes, such as improvements to Highway 101 and Highway 1 interchange, improvements to the roads in general, potholes and snow clearing. And respondents also indicated that a transit stop linking Mount Uniacke to either Sackville or Halifax would be of benefit. Amenities and services. So we asked respondents about amenities and services, and they indicated that they were happy with what they did have in the community, such as Eddie's and Withrows. Respondents identified a wide range of new amenities and services they would like to have in the community, and these are just some of the top ones mentioned in the list. So daycare, recreation facility, large grocery store, gym, a high school so kids don't have to be bused to West Hants, sidewalks, doctors and health services, a larger library. Some respondents were happy with what is available in the Uniacke area and didn't want more, especially if the taxes were going to increase. Some respondents want to make sure the big chains wouldn't put out local businesses. Parks, trails, and recreation. Respondents are very happy with the trails and parks already found in the Mount Uniacke area, and that was repeated over and over within the survey as well, that they appreciate the trails and parks that were there. They did make some suggestions, such as building an accessible trail for a wheelchair and trails that are flat for seniors, off-leash walking trails and dog parks, different types of trails for different uses, such as bikes, horses, and all-terrain vehicles, beach park with access for all, would like to see a sidewalk along Highway 1, mountain biking trails and parks, recreation facility, pool, rinks, sports courts, gyms, etc., outdoor fields and courts for things like pickleball, and they'd like to see the old rail line converted to a rails to trails model. We asked the community about sustainability as well, and we found that sustainability means many different things to many different people. So for some, sustainability meant fiscal sustainability, making sure the taxes didn't go up and that the municipality is fiscally responsible. For others, a sustainable community is a community with sufficient services to service the community. For others, sustainability is the protection of ecological, human, and economic health and vitality. Others pointed to reducing emissions and using green technologies. And responses to the sustainability questions were very different, and those should be kind of reviewed themselves for a complete picture. We asked if the protection of wetlands and waterways was important, and 95% of residents indicated that it was important. Respondents throughout the survey indicated that the natural environment was important to them and that the protection of waterways, forests, and public green spaces should be considered in planning for the area. So we also asked questions pertaining to imagining Mount Uniacke in the future, and participants were asked to identify their favorite communities in Nova Scotia. Most respondents selected traditional towns such as Wolfville and Tatamagouche. Several residents indicated that Mount Uniacke was their favorite community. When asked what they liked about these communities, respondents identified the following: places where amenities and services are within the community, sidewalks, trails, parks, and other recreational opportunities within the center of the community, have street trees and do a good job landscaping their community, walkable social and public spaces. They have opportunities, housing, jobs, and services, small town feel, able to walk everywhere, and they have cafes, restaurants, gyms, etc. We asked about design features. So survey respondents identified design features they would like to have added to their neighborhoods. And they indicated nice signs and flower boxes, sidewalks and street lights, landscaping, bike lanes, creating a town center, well-maintained buildings, green spaces, recreation amenities. Not all residents wanted to see design features added to their community. They moved there for the rural feel and lack of amenities and wanted the community to stay that way. So on to community engagement. Now that the Uniacke survey is complete, staff will make the results of the survey available to the public on our municipal website. Staff also recommend that a community open house and public information meeting be held in Mount Uniacke to discuss the results of the survey, to discuss some of the recommendations coming forward from our background reports, and to seek input from the community. Additional community engagement will take place before the adoption of the Uniacke secondary planning strategy. So we're doing the community survey results. We'll do an open house and public information meeting, and we're actually looking at possibly doing that on July 4th in the community of Mount Uniacke. From now until then, over the next 3 months, we hope to give you the majority of our background papers but we'll continue our consultation with reviewing agencies. Then in September, we hope to present a draft secondary planning strategy to Planning Advisory Committee. And then we'll move forward and do a formal public information meeting and then afterwards ask for first reading and move to a public hearing. So in conclusion, planning staff feel that the UNIAC Land Use Survey was successful in capturing how residents feel their community should grow, and they have identified items to help them in that growth. In general, UNIAC residents enjoy their community, love their access to nature and the existing parks and trails, and support their local businesses. They are not interested in having access to the community's natural assets diminished and would like the municipality to take into consideration investing in new trails, recreational opportunities, and beach parks. They would like to have land use regulations that respect the natural environment and encourage sustainable development. Planning staff will use the results of the survey to support the development of the UNIAC secondary plan. Our recommendation is to accept the staff report and authorize staff to hold an open house and public information meeting in Mount UNIAC. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. First up to speak, Councilor Musa.
Oh, kind of a little bit late now. I was gonna tell Debbie that the report are switched, like the first one we have here is for commercial properties, and like if you click on the report.
Yes, I noticed that. I've been doing
Yeah, I
it
was
6
gonna-
times. And
Because
Oh.
I saw some counselors, they couldn't find it because it talk
I
differently.
apologize. I thought that the survey results should go first.
Oh, yeah, it does, but when you click on it, the commercial one comes instead of,
Oh, it's
they
linked
were,
to the
they
wrong
were like,
documents.
they were put under different, I don't know if you understand me, but if you click on the first one, the commercial
Okay,
comes in.
I apologize.
Oh, no, it's okay, but I saw some counselors, they're looking at, I was looking at Councilor Garden Cole and she was lost, and I was.
Thank you, Councilor. Next up to speak, Councilor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through your staff. Yeah, I think 470 people responding to an online survey is good. Normally, you're lucky to get 55, 60. This is something that your public information meeting is going to be, the timing of your public information meeting might not get the turnout you want. Coming right after a long weekend, a lot of people in the area do go away the July 1st weekend and throughout the week take an extra vacation for RVing and travel. So I'm just going to kind of check back, and I might come back with a motion on this at council night to see, just gauge if there's enough people left in the community that want to come on that date, because that date can be a little bit tricky. I know the summertime is tricky regardless. There's never a good date.
No.
But following the Canada Day weekend might be a problem. It might not. I don't know yet. But you're definitely, I definitely like the process of the 2 public information meetings, because there's going to be a lot. And the community has changed quite a bit too, right? There's a lot of people that have moved out to the new developments that are experienced in the community. So I'm glad to see that this is moving forward. And I'll move the recommended motion.
Thank you, Councilor. It's moved in second.
Question.
Questions being called, we'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. Last item on the agenda for planning today is UNIAC Secondary Planning Strategy, Commercial Land. And Debbie, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as part of the UNIAC Secondary Planning Strategy, staff have undertaken a review of commercial lands in the UNIAC area. And this review has included lands owned Village Core, Regional Commercial, and Business Park. We also met with EBD staff to discuss the future of commercial development in the UNIAC area and to determine if any changes to the commercial land uses may want to be considered as part of the UNIAC Secondary Planning Strategy. Village Core zoned lands. So the Village Core zone is located on land that has been the traditional center of the community. Many of the properties are developed with commercial land uses or single-unit dwellings. As with other traditional community centers in the corridor that are also zoned village core, staff feel that this development pressure warrants, many of the homes located in the village core zone will be converted to other uses. Although it's not a home, one such instance of this is the church that was sold and is now being converted into a veterinarian's office. So again, the market warranted that change. As the population in the Uniacke area increases and demand for amenities increases, opportunities for redevelopment will be undertaken. However, redevelopment is market dependent. So right now with the price of houses, things might not look as good for converting those commercial uses, but that could change. The village core contains some undersized lots, and it would be difficult to obtain approvals for septic systems for these lots. Other lots are large and contain single-unit dwellings, but there is potential for additional development along Highway 1. So these smaller lots could be consolidated with neighboring properties, or in both of these cases, there could be an opportunity for the development of food truck-related businesses. So a development permit for a food truck can be issued as a temporary commercial use for a season on commercially zoned lands, and food trucks allow for businesses to test the market without having to invest in a bricks and mortar building. So again, it's just an alternative for some of those existing undersized lots, which would be very expensive to get those septic systems on. Regional commercial zone lands. There are several regional commercial zoned lands, lots available for new commercial development or have the potential for being developed. Regional commercial zone lands are located near the interchange for Highway 101 and Highway 1 and offer good connections to the highway system. Further expansion of the regional commercial zone to the east would allow for new road to be constructed and additional lands to be developed. So here's the current zoning, and this maroon color is the current regional commercial zone. And then what we're recommending be added to the draft report and go to community is showing the expansion of that regional commercial zone to the 1, 2, 3 properties there. And this could potentially allow for a new road to be added in here to service some of those lots in the back. And staff understand that could be restrictions due to the properties being wet, but that would be up to the property owners to determine if there's viability in developing those lands. And EBD staff are aware of the property owners and believe that they would be in favor of this change. Staff also recommend that a required future transportation connections map be developed for the Uniacke area and be added to Appendix D of the subdivision bylaw. So we also have this map for the corridor area, so we propose just creating one for also the Uniacke area. And we should have that possible new road as a connection through those lands. And a future background report on transportation will actually contain more details, and we'll show you a draft map to see if Planning Advisory Committee agree. Business Park zoned lands. So the Uniacke Business Park is full. Lands owned by the municipality have been subdivided and sold. There are a limited number of properties in private ownership that are zoned business park that could further be developed and possibly subdivided to create smaller lots. Expansion of the Uniacke Business Park is difficult due to constraints such as Highway 101, Highway 1, and the location of nearby residential development. As the population in the Uniacke and Lakelands area increase, there may be a future need for a new interchange to be located in the Lakelands Ardos area. If a new interchange is identified as a future project by Nova Scotia Public Works, staff recommend working with West Hanson and the province to determine the best location for the interchange so that both municipalities could benefit from a new connection. Land use survey, so I'm just going to talk about the results of the survey and our commercial lands. So as part of the Uniacke Land Use Survey, residents were asked what type of amenities they would like to see in their community. And respondents were happy with Eddie's Variety and with Rose Farm Market, but they would like to have a larger grocery store in the area. The regional commercial RC zone allows for a wide variety of commercial uses, including grocery stores and other retail uses. And for the quarter area, that's where you have Superstore and Sobeys. They're both located on regional commercial zone lands. The village core zone also permits smaller retail uses, so then you could have the smaller places there. Therefore, there is land appropriately zoned in the Mount Uniacke area to support a grocery store. One of the top items that was mentioned in the survey was daycares, both home-based and general. So that was requested over and over again in the survey. Home-based daycares can be located as is, home-based daycares can be located in a home-based business in every residential zone and in the rural use zone and in the village core zone in Mount Uniacke area. And commercial daycare centers are permitted to be located in the village core zone, regional commercial zone, and business park zone. So there is appropriately zoned land available, and a daycare can be located nearly anywhere within the community. It's just that somebody has to see the market demand for that use. Restaurants are another amenity that survey respondents would like to see additional options for. Residents identified restaurant-related uses such as cafes, bakeries, and pubs as the needed amenities for the community. All three of the commercial zones that staff have identified permit full and limited service restaurants. Appropriately zoned land is available in the community. Respondents also indicated that they would rather have locally owned and operated businesses than large chain restaurants and takeout food locations, though the municipality cannot issue permits based on ownership type or location. Mount Uniacke and the surrounding area has land that is appropriately zoned for the noted uses. However, East Hants cannot control market demand for land or control if the businesses are locally driven or from outside of the Uniacke or the area or the province. Demand for commercial land will continue to be market driven, and the commercial amenities identified by respondents in the Uniacke land use survey will only be developed once the market is ready. So we do have some recommendations for the draft report, and that's, so these are just not saying that PAC or council is going to approve these at this point in time. This is just to give us authorization to include these in the final draft report that will come back to PAC. So extend the regional commercial designation and zone by changing land use designation and zone of these three PIDs here to regional commercial designation and zone. Create a required future transportation connections map for Mount Uniacke and include the new map under Appendix D of the subdivision bylaw. And on the Mount Uniacke required future transportation connections map, add a road connecting through the regional commercial zone lands that would allow for additional development opportunities. And recommendation is to include the recommendations outlined in the Uniacke Commercial Review Report to be included in the draft Uniacke Secondary Planning Strategy Report. And below is the recommended motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. First up to speak, Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. So any of the rezoning of the properties would have to be approved by the current landowners. If they said no, then it would remain the same, correct?
Yeah, so what we would do is we'd put it into the draft plan, and then when we go to the public information meetings, we notify those owners that there's a proposed change.
Okay. Just as long as they have the option.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Yeah.
force anybody to do anything.
No.
And in all these zones
Well-
that you're doing, that you're putting forward, is there a mixed use capability in any of these zones where you can have commercial on the bottom and some residential on top?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the village core zone allows for commercial on the bottom and residential on the top. And I will be doing a background report on housing probably in June that will talk more about that.
Okay, because, I mean, a lot of people classify the village core as just by the school forward, but the village core almost goes from the business park all the way to the Uniacke House, because you have a lot of subdivision roads that are in close proximity to Eddie's Variety and the other pizza place and the computer store across the road that people walk to from those areas. That whole stretch, I think the village core, Mount Uniacke, is a lot more elongated than dense. And even if you look at the way the development is, because people walk from those roads to Bell Park. They walk to Eddie's Variety. The mailboxes, the way they're located, there is a little bit of walkable area on that Eder Road, by the Eder Road exit, all the way down to Westlake Avenue, and just a little bit beyond that. Those residents are almost like a bit of the core. So I'll be interested to see how we move forward and look at the village core of where that falls. Because the one thing that I hear from every resident is all the business people want better security. Well, there's no better security than having somebody live on top of your business. And the other thing with it is the ability to have somewhere for youth and for seniors to go when they want to downsize and stay in the community without having to go to Sackville, Halifax, Dartmouth, or Windsor. So that being said, I'll move the recommended motion.
Thank you, Counselor. On before the motion, I'll go to CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to point of clarification to your question about if the owners didn't want it to be rezoned, would it still be rezoned? There has been precedent set in the municipality that properties that owners didn't want rezoned, council still decided to go ahead with the rezoning. So council would certainly take their opinions into consideration, but depending on the council of the day, if they want to rezone a property, it wouldn't necessarily not be done because an owner didn't want it done. There's been large sections of zones that we have rezoned. There was opposition to it from particular owners within that section of property.
I'll go back to you, Counselor Perry. Just a minute. Counselor Perry, you want to follow up?
Yeah, I was just going to say, understanding that, I would still, it is a decision of council, and it would be my intent that if the owners wanted to keep that portion of land, I believe it's rural use as it is right now, rural use for possible rezoning to something else in the future, because the first part of the properties along the front are already regional commercial. So it would be my intent not to support anything that would be forced. I want it to be mutual.
I agree, but just from a technical point of view, council does have the ability to rezone.
Absolutely understood. Thank you, CEO. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, CEO. Last up to speak, Counselor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, speaking about those properties, in a regional commercial, you're not allowed to have residential on top, right?
To you, Mr. Chair, no, you're not.
So we're talking about housing crisis, and we're taking probably one of the prime land in Mount Uniacke to be able, if we wanna approve some apartment, small apartment building, that will be the spot close to the highway, close to the Irving, close to everything, to the business park. And what I don't support at all is to zone, those property have, like one of the property have kilometers of frontage on the Sackville River. And I don't think that would be a good idea, and I don't think the public's gonna accept that, because the Sackville River is very important to many people, and I don't think putting commercial on there and open all that commercial space close to that river could be an idea.
Thank you, Counselor. You go ahead, Debbie.
To you, Mr. Chair, just to give you to let you know, we have been in conversation with the Sackville Rivers Association, so they are aware of the potential proposal to change that. And there would be also a setback from the river that they wouldn't be allowed to, there's a 20-meter setback currently under our regulations where you're not allowed to build or to remove the vegetation. Also, we're not saying that all of that land could even potentially be developed, because it may not be able to. If it's sensitive lands and stuff like that, they might not be able to be developed on it. It just provides an option. Also, we're going to be doing the housing report as well. And one of the things that we looked at is creating, as per the survey, creating those links to the amenities that are already in that community, such as the drugstore and the little grocery stores and stuff like that in Eddie's. So creating the housing nodes down there rather than within, right next door to the business park, where it tends to be a little bit louder, possibly smellier. And there's also a lot of lots there just before Eder Road that has a lot of cleared areas that have a heavy equipment and laydown area. So trying to keep those nodes of for housing in the center of the community, where if we ever get a sidewalk, that's where we would be looking to put the sidewalk, I imagine, is along that stretch of road. So creating that compact community center that's walkable and allows people to have access to amenities.
I understand that, but when we talk about bringing busing to Mount Uniacke, I don't think it's going to go all the way to the top. So it might stop at the Irving or at the Carpool. So So if we ever gonna have any senior homes or something like that, we should be thinking about that area to be for that kind of development too. So I know if the owners want 100% commercial, I agree 100% with the owner, but I cannot enforce something that the owner don't want and don't even think about the broader community and the broader need of the community for senior housing, for low-income housing. You want those to be as close to the public transit as you can. And if it doesn't go all the way to Mount Uniacke, so we didn't accomplish anything. So I know it's preliminary, but staff should think about those stuff too.
Thank you, Counselor. Warden Rolston.
Thank you. This motion simply puts these things into the draft report, and that report can be changed based on feedback that we get. I'm sure there'll be public consultation on that going forward, and if we, depending on what we hear, there will be opportunities to make any needed changes, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Nobody else left to speak. We have a motion that's been moved in second. What is your wish? Questions being called. We'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. I want to thank staff for their reporting and the two public members for attending. And that brings us to the end of Planning and Development Committee. Motion to adjourn. Moved, all in favor? Contrary-minded, motion carried. And it says there's a break. So we're taking a break, Madam Warden? Or you just want to continue on with?
Counselors, what is your wish? Do you need a 5-minute break before we go into council? Or will we just carry on?
Okay, we're going to carry on, so I'll vacate the chair and get it while it's warm.
Okay, Carl, we're serious here.
Oh, we'll get serious, okay.
When we're ready? Okay. I will call this a regular meeting of Council for Policy and in camera to order. The first item of business is the Corporate and Residential Services Report. So over to you, Councilor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Warden. The committee held its regular meeting on April 16th, 2024, and the following motions are coming forward as a result of the meeting. Revision to council remuneration, travel reimbursement policy. The council remuneration and travel reimbursement policy needs an update to include council motion C23 bracket 198, which made council members eligible for life insurance, accidental death, and dismemberment, dependent life insurance, health, and dental coverage. In addition to the April 2024 changes to the council salary and travel allowance amounts noted in the policy can now be updated. The Corporate Residential Services Committee recommends to council the council give notice of intent to approve amendments to the council remuneration and travel reimbursement policy to reflect eligible benefits as well as the April 1st, 2024 revised salary and travel allowances as attached to the Executive Committee agenda on April 16th, 2024. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Question.
Question's been called.
Councilor Musa stepped in.
The motion is passed by a vote of 9-1 with Councilor Rhino voting nay.
Second one, review of recognition policy. Guys, get that scrolled up. Thank you. In October 2022, Council adopted the recognition policy, which unified the various forms of recognition into one policy and repealed the 5 separate policies that dealt with recognition. As part of the annual policy review, we have the opportunity to clarify the language related to firefighter long service recognition. The Corporate Residential Service Committee recommends the council give notice of intent to approve the changes to the recognition policy, which provides more clarity around the firefighter long service recognition attached to the Executive Committee agenda on April 16th, 2024. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Question has been called. And the motion is passed unanimously by those present.
Council procedure policy. The annual review of the council procedures policy as per section 1.4 of the policy, as well as housekeeping updates based on decisions of council over the past year, were prepared for consideration. The Corporate Residential Service Committee recommends the council give notice of intent to approve council procedure policies as attached to the Executive Committee agenda dated April 16th, 2024. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Councillor Tingley.
Through the chair, I just want to take one last stab at this, take about 2 minutes. Councillor Garden Cole had brought up about CN there, and I just want to give this as an example of where a councillor can assist. Staff wrote to CN on September the 8th, I think. August the 4th of last year. November 8th, I had written communication with staff, and from staff, this line was, on the CN response, I have heard nothing, and honestly, I expect to receive no response. So I went back to staff and said, no response is rude. I assume you do not expect a response from NSPW either. Is there any reason I should not follow up? And the response was no. So nothing was really happening. I didn't interfere with any negotiations or anything like that. I did follow up, and the CN are going to come to the table and discuss this and
I'm going to interrupt you, Councillor. Yes, you did follow up sometime after that, but in that interim, there were further communications between CN and the director of the department. So,
well, I finished what I've got to say on that. The only other point I would like to say is that all we're doing here is muzzling ourselves. And I don't think we should vote to muzzle ourselves, but that's my last point on it. And there was no interference, and I think we were able to help. If there was
okay, Councillor, I'm going to stop you there.
Okay. Go.
Any further discussion on the motion? Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Madam Warden and Deputy Warden. I just want to clarify that I just used the main examples that I could think of, being the crosswalk and the flooding and 3 different issues. I think the other one was a major road repair, as things that I'm cognizant that staff is working on, so I don't address those. That's all I was doing by throwing out those 3 examples. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Question.
Councillor Rhino.
Well, hearing what was said by Councillor Tingley, I just feel that there's questions that have to maybe be asked of staff, which would be done in an in-camera, should be done in an in-camera session.
So you would need a motion to go in camera to discuss personnel issues.
I would move that we go in camera to discuss personnel issues.
Seconded by Councillor McPhee. Any discussion?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Counselor Hebb voting nay. Should I have had a recorded vote on that? I'm sorry, folks. Okay, we will move in camera. We'll give staff some time to turn off the live stream.
But I'll move the resolution as proposed.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? No. Counselor Mitchell.
Yeah, just a quick question. Is the FCM bringing this resolution to the conference, or?
Just 1 second here.
Through you, Madam Warden, I'm not sure if it's going to be this exact resolution, but I'm sure at their conference, they'll be discussing long-term infrastructure programming for municipalities for the federal government.
Thank you.
Are you ready for the question? Question's been called. We'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. I'm returning to the agenda. I'm just waiting. Now we have a contractual and a land use, an issue and an update to be done in camera left on the agenda today, so I would be looking for a motion to go in camera for those items.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion is carried. We will give staff time to Okay, folks, I would report that we met in camera to discuss contractual and land issues. There are no motions coming forward out of those conversations. And that concludes the business on our agenda today. So I would be looking for a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Moved by Councillor Rhino, seconded by the Deputy Warden. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion is carried. We are adjourned.